Hello everyone and welcome to Capitol Watch for Thursday, February 21st, our weekly look at legislative developments from Jefferson City. And joining us from our governmental relations offices in Jefferson City is our Associate Executive Director for Advocacy and our Chief Lobbyist, Mike Reed. And Mike, the weather came into play this week and the legislators went home a little early, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They closed everything up on Wednesday at noon. Very surprising. It's been a long time since I've seen them do this, but they tried to get out of here before the weather hit.
Right. Mike, one of the issues that was up for consideration in the state Senate this week had to do with providing a course on gun safety to elementary school students. Tell us about that.
Yes, that was in Senator Brown's Senate Bill 75. It would require that every public school and charter school have the Eddie Eagle course in kindergarten or first grade for hunter safety. That mandate was changed to a may as the bill was perfected. And so it says to schools now, schools shall look at to see whether or not this course is appropriate to them. Also in that bill, it softened some of the shalls to mays, and it says the schools may look again at various ideas that they have for educating teachers and faculty members on what happens with intruders and safety courses.
So it does provide for local control, Mike, which is much preferable to the way the bill was originally structured. Is that right?
Yes. This is a very commendable bill because it was filed right before the shootings in the East, but it gives us more local control, and it brings to question for each school district how they handle such situations and what the training should be.
Another bill we expected to come up for some floor debate this week, Mike, but it didn't make that, and that was the bill we've talked about before as far as assigning letter grades to school buildings. So do we expect that to come up maybe next week?
I still expect it to come up next week. There's a lot of negotiation, a lot of work. There's some amendments out there. One of the amendments out there that takes off the letter grading but keeps all the rest of the information there. We think that's most important because people need to know what's going on. Assigning a letter grade can be punitive. But in this instance, when we have the ability to have all of the information out there that DESE will have on a report card for each school, we think that's the best way to handle it. And we look for that bill to come up next week.
And that would be on the House side.
On the House side.
Right. And Mike, House Elementary and Secondary Education Committee did meet this week and considered a bill related to the teaching of evolution. Tell us about that.
Yes, this bill was brought to the committee, and it says it is to teach critical thinking on the question of evolution. The bill's sponsor said he wants to make sure that teachers are not penalized in any way about what they teach, but to make sure that the teachers bring in critical thinking about evolution and chemical evolution, biological evolution and chemical evolution, and he stated that it's desire to teach creative and competency and making sure that people ask questions.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike, and one of the, before we move on to legislative forum, I did want to mention Senate Education Committee did not meet this week because of the weather, is that right?
Senate Education did not meet. I expect them to meet next week. The bills that we're going to look at was two bills for pre-K education and early childhood education, and then another bill that deals with conflicts of interest for school board members, which is a very important bill that is being sponsored by Senator Keogh.
One of the big events of the week in Jefferson City, Mike, was our own legislative forum that we held on Tuesday, an annual event where we bring school board members and administrators from all over the state to Jefferson City to learn about education issues and also visit their legislators at the Capitol. And once again, we had a very successful event, and one of the agenda items was a panel discussion by some legislators on various bills that are pending before the legislature. And one of the issues that was discussed was increasing the bonding capacity for school districts to help them meet their local school construction needs, something we've supported for a number of years now. State Representative Mike Thompson of Maryville, who's on the House Elementary and Secondary Education Committee, was on that panel, and he had some comments on that measure, and let's take a look at that right now.
I do think that we need to be able to increase that because I represent schools in northwest Missouri, a lot of them very small, not particularly wealthy, and they just simply do not have the capacity to do a bond and to put up a facility at all because of the value of what they have there. You know, I'm not sure what that number should be. I don't know whether we take that clear off, whether we raise it to 20, whether we raise it to 25. But I think people are starting to see the need.
So, Mike, where do we stand on that issue? Do you think it has some momentum this year in the session?
I would hope that it has some momentum because, in fact, it is a very important bill for school districts as well as for the economic development of the community. There's a pent-up desire and a pent-up need for building school buildings, and this has a multiplier effect by building buildings. It helps the community develop more. That being said, the bill has been introduced. There is some pushback right now. We're into some negotiations. Some leadership is discussing, well, if you want to have your bill, your bonding bill, then you need to make sure that you work with us on other pieces of legislation. We believe that this piece of legislation is so important it needs to stand or fall on its own. So we will be keep pushing on this, but we need our members to keep discussing this with their local state representatives and say, hey, this is something that needs to get out and at least be discussed on the floor of the Missouri House. It's a joint resolution sponsored by Representative Neff, and it's very, very important that we get this ability to vote on whether or not districts want to impose more of a bonded indebtedness upon themselves.
Another speaker at our legislative forum was State Senator David Pierce of Warrensburg. He is the chairman of the Senate Education Committee. And Senator Pierce talked about the importance of school board members, administrators, and legislators working as a team for the benefit of public schools around the state. And he also encouraged school board members and administrators to invite legislators to tour schools in their districts. Let's take a look now at part of what Senator Pierce had to say.
Find ways to invite your elected officials to come to your schools. During spring break or on Fridays when we're not in session, call up your state rep and say, hey, how would you like to come tour an 8th grade science class? How would you like to have lunch with a group of first graders? Because believe me, that's pretty interesting, isn't it, to do that? And it never hurts to say, oh, by the way, we'll have a camera there to take a picture, and we might even put it in the local newspaper. So mention that phrase, photo op. That always really helps. Don't assume that the state rep or the senator knows about your program, because for the most part, we don't.
And Mike, that's a very important message, isn't it, to expose our legislators to what's really going on in our schools.
It's an excellent message, and we really appreciate the senator coming and delivering that, because he said just exactly what's right. Let us know what's going on. Please come. Please invite us. The best way to know what's happening is to have somebody come into your school and leaders coming in and seeing what programs you have and how you're developing and delivering those programs and educating the students in your district. Extremely important. The give and take, the discussion, perhaps even getting on different sides of an issue just so you can argue it out to see what the other side has to say. Extremely important, and I really appreciate the senator's comments, because it's what we've been trying to say for some period of time. Let's get involved. You're involved. Our members are involved because they're elected. Let's get involved with other elected officials and explain how all of the activities that they do affect the job that you have as a school board member.
Well, Mike, once we get past the winter storm, they'll go back into session next week. What do we have to look forward to next week?
They'll go back into session next week. We'll have several hearings on education bills. I'm not sure what the House is going to do yet. I have a feeling that they probably will have the parent trigger bill up for hearing within the next 2 weeks. Plus, there'll be a hearing on expansion of virtual education opportunities. The budget bill will be worked on in the House committee, and so there's going to be a lot of activity in the next 2 weeks.
All right, Mike Reed, thanks a lot for being with us as always, and we thank you for being with us on our program today. Be sure to read our Legislative Voice electronic newsletter we issue every Friday, and our daily blog on our website, and we hope you can join us again next week for another edition of MSBA's Capitol Watch.